Okay, O is for overclocking.
What now? How now? Brown cow?
Overclocking. So, do you remember what CPU clock speed is? Not so much?
Kind of.
All right, okay, so how quickly can you say a tongue twister?
Peter Pepper, pick a pepper's better. Peter Pepper, pick a peppers. How many pick a peppers did Peter Pepper pick?
Yeah, super fast. So I don't know what your clock speed is, but let's say we quantify that as how many words you can say in a second of a tongue twister. You're probably at about 20 words in a second. I'm like 2. So your clock speed is much faster, which means you can get through a lot more than what I can get. And so the clock speed for a CPU is the same. The faster the clock speed, the more instructions or computations a CPU can calculate every second, and pretty much that directly translates to a faster overall computer. There are other constraints around that, but typically faster clock speed, faster computer. So overclocking is the practice whereby you get the computer, and as the home user of that PC, your clock speed for your CPU might be, say, 3 gigahertz. And
What's
you
a
go
gigahertz?
Gigahertz is just the mechanism, the measurement of the clock speed. So giga is effectively a billion calculations per second. Megahertz being a million. Okay, so it's a lot.
A very lot.
So it's already a lot, but you can increase it. You can go, okay, although it says on the box that I can do 3, I can actually dial that up and make it, say, 3.3 gigahertz or 3.5 gigahertz. And so you can go 10, 15, even 20% higher. But how could that work? Like, surely if you get a processor and it says 3 gigahertz, how can you tell the computer to operate at 3.5 gigahertz, and how can that still work? Well, so glad you asked me that question, Eva, because what it comes down to is the mechanism by which manufacturers determine what the clock speed is going to be. Well, essentially what they do is they manufacture the batch of processors, and then they test them by increasing the speed with which that CPU is asked to operate the instructions. And then they measure the success. So if it does the calculations all correctly at 3 gigahertz and it operates within the right temperature, great. They dial it up to 3.3 gigahertz and it has a failure, so it's not within its tolerance, then they go, actually, it's not a 3.3 gigahertz, it's a 3 gigahertz CPU, and then they go and sell it. But as an individual user, you don't know necessarily, and it might have been a really minor failure in that CPU that stopped it being able to be certified for the faster clock speed. So what people soon realized is, actually, if we just dial it up to, say, 3.3, 3.5 gigahertz, actually the computer still works fine. Doesn't get too hot, it all works perfectly. So that is why you can overclock, and overclocking successfully means that actually the computer operates perfectly fine, even though it's running faster than the stated amount. Now, there's a second reason why overclocking can work, which really comes down to commerce and supply and demand and business models, because you might, as a manufacturer a whole bunch and they all get certified at 3.5 gigahertz, but only a certain portion of the population want to pay the premium for that faster CPU, right? And so instead of discounting and diluting the value and not getting as much money from that, what you can do is you can mark those faster CPUs as a lower spec. So mark it as 3 gigahertz, sell it at the lower price, and maybe in your material you say, good for overclocking. Now, you don't want to say explicitly that it'll work at 3.5, because then why would anyone buy and pay extra for a 3.5? So it's a clever marketing distribution technique. And that is overclocking. Okay, cheers.
He hit my thumb.